Before we get into this video proper, I would just like to make two very pertinent statements. The first one being that this video is all about my personal health and some of the problems and discoveries that I've made over the last couple of days that dispels any theories I've had in the past and actually ties my problems back to the time we had the pandemic. And this is where my problems have stemmed from. In this video, I'm going to give you a lot of useful information that might be important to others with similar circumstances to myself and similar symptoms to what I'm suffering at the moment. It could also be very informative for those of you who might have friends or relatives that you've noticed are struggling since the pandemic, and what I'm telling you today may be similar to what they're experiencing. And if that's the case, I'm quite sure that they would be very happy if you passed the information to them also. It might take a lot of worries away from them that they're suffering at the moment. If you're not particularly involved in any of this and you're not particularly interested in the problems associated with it, then this is maybe a good time to leave, because I don't really want to waste time for others that are not really interested in this subject matter. The second statement I'd like to make is about the information I have, and that's all been sourced from open source files I have looked up on the researched on the internet over the last couple of days, and also advice taken from two medical doctors with their opinions, etc. So I am not a medical practitioner in any form at all. So I don't have those sort of qualifications, but I do have the problems, I can assure you. In the previous videos that I've made, I stated that I believe my problems came from the fact that I've been very inactive from the start of the pandemic right through and up to this present moment of time. And I believe that that's where my problems were coming from. And many of the people that watched the video sent me some very good advice and encouragement, etc. And that's much appreciated, by the way. And thank you for that. Those that watch those videos will know that I made a plan to try and take a lot more physical exercise and work towards building up my strength. Very quickly, I realized it was going to be a much bigger job than it seemed, and I didn't seem to even have the very basic energy levels to start doing this. And that was where I thought, let me find out more what this problem is all about. My problem is much worse than I had anticipated, in that I couldn't even carry out the basic exercises that I was planning to do. After consultation with two doctors and doing a lot of research online, I can 100% confidently say that it is a very high probability that what I am suffering from right at this moment of time is long COVID. Now, I was of a complete misunderstanding, previously that long COVID was a condition that laid people up in their beds suffering from advanced flu-like symptoms for extended periods, and that was long COVID, and made life very, very difficult for them. Indeed, for some people, that may actually be the case. And I know that there are people that have been laid up in bed with long COVID for long periods. But what I have discovered is that the term long COVID actually covers a whole multitude of conditions. And doctors say there is in excess of 200 symptoms that indicate that you may have contracted long COVID. So how do we develop long COVID? That's the question. And once again, because it's a a term that covers a whole multitude of various symptoms, then it's very difficult to say how it's been actually, how the condition began. It could have begun in several ways, from the infections itself, through the treatment, and there's all sorts of investigations going into the efficacy of vaccines, etc. So there's a whole aspect of a lot of aspects to how this might have actually begun. But what I can tell you is that at this moment of time, the World Health Organization states that there are 65 million people globally suffering from long COVID. And many experts say that this is highly underestimated and the numbers are actually much, much higher than 65 million. So it is serious. From my perspective, knowing that this is what I have the high probability of having, is both bad news and good news at the same time, and I'll explain why. It's bad news because this condition has really, really brought me down. It's made me feel terrible. I've spent a lot of time worried, concerned about my future, thinking, what is the future? Is there any future? So it's been quite serious to me that way, and I really have struggled to do many things that I would normally do. Thankfully, my wife stood by me very well, and she identified the problems that I was having, and she's stepped up to the mark and taken on a lot of work that I would normally do. And I'm very lucky, and I appreciate having her here to help me like that. And also, it's not just the term that they're using for what I'm experiencing is acute chronic fatigue syndrome, and it's just, you're totally washed out with energy. But there are other aspects that I didn't really think about too much that are all connected in. For instance, I've never been someone that suffers from headaches, but for the last few months, I've been getting constant headaches several times a day in the back left quadrant of my head here, and they can be quite prolonged and get me down. Mood swings, worry, depression, all aspects that I think I've gone through truthfully during this time. They say another big symptom is brain fog. I don't know too much about that, maybe because I can't remember, I don't know, but yes, sometimes I do have problems thinking what I was going to do, or what I was in the middle of doing something. It's the old syndrome when you're going up the stairs, when you get to the middle, was I going up or was I coming down? Was I getting into the bath or was I getting out of the bath? That's the sort of things we're talking about to an extreme, but yes, it has been some effects like that as well, I suppose. And also of great concern is that I now realize that I'm in a much higher risk factor for things like heart attacks and strokes. So I have got to be thinking about that and doing all the necessary things like making sure I drink enough liquids in a day, water, getting good diet, getting proper sleep, all these aspects that make sure that you're living as healthily as possible in the condition that you're in. And to summarize, it really, really is a shit condition that's had me worried for some time. I started off thinking I'm just getting old, and then why am I aging so rapidly? And I don't see other people aging at the same rate. All these things go through your mind, and why is it happening? Well, now I know, and that's a good thing. That's the first of the good things about it. And also, after doing the research, I'm listening to other people's stories, how they've dealt with it and how they've worked their way back, etc. the good news is there can be light at the end of a very long tunnel. And I'll go into that a little bit more in a moment. From what I've been looking at this weekend, the majority of the long-term stories I've read about, the stories I've read about the long COVID, is that it is a lengthy process to fight your way out of this condition. And even when you get out of it, you've got to be careful how you then maintain your life. It does take a lot of time, like several people have talked about this acute chronic fatigue syndrome and how they battled it. And it's shocking, actually, that, people that are being very athletic in that, and they've been taken down with this, they've got to start with doing things like just going out and trying to take a walk for 10 minutes, just walking for 10 minutes, and then taking a couple of days rest before they try it again, and adding every now and again, adding another minute or two to the walk, just to build the strength up slowly, because you have to be extra careful not to overload the other parts of your body, your organs and your tissues, etc., because that can detract from the whole treatment also. So it's a very lengthy process of recovering from this long COVID, if that makes sense. Talking serious for a few moments, I saw in the statistics that the median age of the people suffering from long COVID is 46. 46. And that's the median age. So there's much younger, and obviously, as I'm an example, there's much older than that as well. But that's a huge range of having a median range of 46. And, I'm in my mid-70s. So I consider myself lucky because I've lived my life. From here, it's downhill for me. And I have no worries about that. I've got a family, I've got a wife and a young daughter. Yes, I know, but that's something that I can't change. And yes, my time here in this environment is limited. But I've had my life, and I've had a good life, and I've still got a good life. And thankfully, with my wife helping me along and my daughter keeping my spirits up and keeping me bouncing, then life is still good to me. And I appreciate life. And every day, every week, every month, and every year for me is a bonus. Wonderful. And I'm looking forward to getting a few more bonuses before I finally depart this existence. But can you imagine that if you're a 46-year-old man and you've got a family, you've got a mortgage, you've got a job, you've got HP agreements, and you've got all sorts of things, and you're suddenly struck by an illness that's going to keep you down for maybe up to 3-4 years. That's a disaster, an absolute unbelievable disaster that could happen to people. And it's happening to thousands and thousands, maybe millions of guys that's finding themselves in this sort of situation. And that's very, very serious. And these people are going to need a lot of support. So all the government organizations and medical organizations have got to come clean about a lot of the things that they're talking about and researching, and understand the problems that are developing. I see a lot of the doctors. There's a guy called Dr. Bob Campbell, well worth looking up on the YouTube, and he's been fighting these arguments about the COVID and the vaccines and all those sorts of things for many years now. And he's a well-respected doctor that is fighting the authorities in some ways to try and improve the situation and get more knowledge out to the public. Well worth looking up. But he is actually highlighting these problems and trying to get the World Organization, all the organizations, to explain it to the governments and for people to start taking action, start listening to people that have got the problems, what they're suffering, the hardships that they're going through, and getting something done about it. Me, I'm lucky, you see, because I don't have these problems, but I can see that there must be huge problems for many, many people in this situation. You know, if you want to know more about long COVID and how it can affect different people in different ways, have a look online. There's tons and tons of information about how big this problem is. And unless you're actually aware of it, know somebody that's involved with it, then a lot of it just goes under the radar. So have a look, make yourself aware of the sort of problems that there are. My 2 days of research gave me a lot of information, and it opened up a lot of things. A lot of it was above me because I'm not a medical person, and a lot of the things I watched went too much into the deep medical side of it. And some of that was absolutely horrible. For instance, there's reports coming out from Germany where they've done studies on people that have actually passed with long COVID, and the sort of things like the horrible, these protein spikes that are going around in our bloodstreams, in our veins, etc. They don't really come to true fruition until we've passed, until we've gone. And then they start developing all these tissue and fat, etc., in our veins and in our arteries, etc. Quite horrible, actually. Quite not something that I enjoyed reading at all. Anyway, now you know my situation and my plan to try and gauge myself to recover as quickly as I can, but as sensibly as I can. And I'm not going to go out and hammer myself around the racing track in the boiling sun at 90 degrees. That certainly will not help me at all. Just slowly catch a monkey, as they used to say. And that's the way I'm going to play it. Thanks for watching. I hope if you know anybody that is suffering similar symptoms to myself, and they don't know their problems, you give them a nudge, get them to go and get themselves checked out. Make the suggestions that there might be problems. I am sure that everybody nearly is going to know someone that's got a long COVID or some sort of condition arising from it. Many thanks again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.